Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Crypto with English. Now, we're taking a slight detour today, but this is a very relevant detour, and this will link to the overall theme of tech and cryptocurrency. Now, we have a returning guest here, Dr. Pat Boulogne. She was on a few months
Hello,
ago.
everybody.
She's here today to talk about her book that she's going to be launching in the beginning of March. Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? And by the way, you can't get a more poignant title than that. It's like a sledgehammer, and it definitely grabs your attention immediately. So, Dr. Pat, thank you very much for coming back on.
You're welcome. I love being here, and I had such a great time the first time. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
I've got a bunch of tidbits up my sleeve to share with people so that
Yes,
they can be healthier, they can move faster, and they can have the success they need and get more out of their day.
that's awesome. So, I guess before we get into the nitty gritty with the book and some of the, nuances and minutia, as a physician and also as an acupuncturist. And by the way, I would like to kind of provide context to everybody here. Dr. Boulogne has the benefit and the advantage of being in a practiced and certified physician as well as a certified acupuncturist. So having essentially the skill sets of both Eastern and Western medicine. So how would you define health?
Well, in my buddy, my first dictionary that I ever owned, Merriam-Webster's dictionary said that health is when your organs are functioning 100% of the time. I'll be paraphrasing this. It's just like, but the problem is on that is that we don't know if our organs are functioning 100% of the time. That always was I was the kid in the back of the room going, but how do you know that? And the World Health Organization, who says that it's not merely the absence of disease or infirmities, and it
Right.
encompasses more, and is not the focus of, but it encompasses much more including your environment. So your environment is very essential and contributes to your level of health, in that.
Right.
So if you break the health definitions down so that you can get a better grip on it, is that I made 5 pillars of health. And the first pillar of health is proper diet and proper nutrition. They have to go hand in hand. You can have a bad diet, and bad nutrition. And you can still say, well, I have got a diet and nutrition, but you don't have a proper one. And so you want to make sure that you have the nutrients, the nutrient density that you need to have. Then you need proper exercise. That's the second pillar. You got to move. You
Yeah.
don't move, you're going to die. And then the third
Right.
pillar is proper sleep. A lot of people are sleep deprived in this country, and they have no clue of why that is. That some of it is because of dirty electricity that are in our houses, and there's a way to manage that and handle that. And a lot of it
Oh,
is
wow.
like they can't shut their thoughts off, which is a
Yeah.
big problem, especially because when you can't shut those thoughts off, it can lead to illness and chronic disease. Because I'll know how you digest your food after an argument or you see something that's upsetting. So
Right.
that sleep portion of that is so important because that's where you repair, you revitalize for the future. A
Right.
huge chunk of it is, and this is when I'm dealing with entrepreneurs, executives, leaders, influencers, and busy professionals, moms and dads, is the proper mindset's huge. Because if you have a good
Yeah.
proper mindset plus a positive mental attitude, then you've got a foundation that's pretty solid so that you can do anything, whether it's your health, whether it's your work, whether it's home, whether it's a relationship. You got to have
Yeah.
that because you need health for everything. And the last biggest component of the 5 pillars is a properly functioning nervous system, which would tie in that the brain controls and coordinates all functions of the body and does so from the brain. That's where it's encapsulated. It's the most important
Right.
organ. And then it comes down the spine that goes to every bone, tissue, organ, and cell. And you have to have posture in order for the structure to work appropriately. So those 5 pieces of the puzzle have got to be there, and got to be there so that it fits, or the pieces of the pie, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
So it's just taking that and piecing that together. So that's what I would tell you is the definition of health. And that's how I
Well,
approach it.
that's well said. And you mentioned something that I found very intriguing. So the WHO, the World Health Organization's definition of health is the absence, I guess, of diseases or infirmities.
It's,
Now, as a
no, no,
medical
no, no.
professional,
No.
yeah,
It's
uh,
not the absence of disease or infirmities.
oh, it's not the absence.
Right. Just so we have some clarity on that. They say it's not the absence of disease or infirmities,
Okay.
but but it takes in the pieces of the puzzle around like your environment, what you breathe,
Right.
eat, water, that type of thing.
Okay. Got it. So
It's
when
important.
yeah, no, absolutely. And thanks for the clarity on that. So putting together this book, what was the main inspiration, or maybe the I guess you could say the switch that went on to inspire and motivate you to put together something like this?
Well, I sold my practice. I bought a practice that was underserved and I sold it very well. And then I moved, I was on Cape Cod and I thought, Cape Cod's not the place to be single. I can guarantee you that. And so I moved to Boston, and I lived in Boston. So I was retired and I was living in Boston. And and then I started, when I was walking around, I was just like, I'm a people watcher. So I would go park myself and have a cup of coffee or have,
Yeah.
water or have a cocktail if it was 5 o'clock and be happy. And just,
Yeah.
sit there and watch people. And I'd watch their faces, the color of their faces, their body posturing, what if they had good structure, so I'd go through my 5 pillars, of health. And and I would do that. So when I was is there, I had this one day after doing this for so long, and I lived downtown right by this area called Post Office Square, which is like it's all the financial district. You have, like Charles Schwab's, Fidelity, all those people down
Right.
there. And so and so I'd go sit there at lunchtime sometimes and just to get sun, just to get out and do something different. Oh, you're not feeling very well. And they would say, like, no, it's just like something, my stomach doesn't, blah, 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 and I would say, why don't you just take the rest of the day off? And I said, and go home, go to sleep. And I said, you have a fever? Well, I don't know. I said, well, if I was your mother, I would put my lips on your forehead because you can always tell they're very sensitive. That's how mothers sometimes can tell if their kids are starting to run a fever. And I said, but I'm
Wow.
not going to do that. But you might want to go home. And some people,
Yeah.
who I've looked at who had this like green, grayish, very orange peelish type look on their face, you ought to go to the hospital. Let's get a
Oh
cap
yeah.
for you, And then the beautiful thing is that would happen every once in a while. Someone would like, oh my God, I was looking for you. You were so bright. Thank you very much. Who are you? I said, I'm Patricia. Just say hi next time you see me. I'm glad I was able to help you. Because I was so
Wow.
burned out from helping people for 10 plus years on Cape
Yeah.
Cod. I just needed a break. And so, but I
Right.
did, it would bother me if somebody dropped in front of me. Um,
Yeah.
so, I say that, I have a story that I say about being in Boston at that time and what spurred me on to really kind of go like, what can I do to give back so people don't have to walk around in the cloud? And so,
Yeah.
when I was retired and I was living in Boston, and what set me on the path that pulled me out of my retirement, this is the thing that did it, is that constant in my face observation while walking downtown Boston. It was clear to me that people, were sick and they didn't know it. And there was also the second thing that happened around the time because I started doing more research on toxins and detoxification. And there was a study by the CDC at the same time that showed that out of 212 suspected dangerous chemicals that were tested, all of them, not a couple, all of them were found in the blood and urine of most Americans. People were
Oh wow.
getting toxic, they were getting ultimately more sick by the accumulatory effects on the environment, from the
Right.
environment. And it was estimated, I think we talked about this last time, that by, 2030, 50% of the population is going to have some level of chronic illness or disease. Well, here's
Right.
the
Yeah.
bad news. I read an article a week ago that estimated that it was already here and it was 55% of the population has some level of chronic illness or disease or something lurking below the surface.
Right.
Um, so I just thought that's really scary. So I'm Dr. Pat Boulogne, and I'm on a mission to stop being well and what it and a way to get back to so your bottom line, and you stop putting the cart before the horse and get in the cart, take the reins, and actually know how to drive it. And it's just like, because when you do that, you can make better decisions about what your next best step is in your health and how to move forward from that, because
Right.
there is no magic pill. You might
Right.
have something, a Band-Aid, but there's no magic pill.
Right. And as far as putting together your book, if we were to talk about maybe the beginning, middle, and end, what do you open with in your book? As far as
Well, I have a message. It's like,
capturing the audience and kind of easing everybody into why are you sick, fat, and tired?
well, I ask a couple questions, and I have 7 questions in the book that I ask, and I won't go through all of them
Right.
here, but I will just go through a couple of them. So here's the bottom line. If you answer yes to any of these, then your next step is to buy this book that's coming out. Then you're going to want to do and go read the whole book and do the questionnaire in the book. And then you're going to want to draw your own picture on your graph so you have your own health snapshot, so you know what's going on in all your organ systems, because it's like a Swiss watch and they all affect each other. And
Right.
then you want to make an appointment with me, and I'll explain to you what you're looking at so that you can make better decisions moving forward in your health. So here's the questions. So, do you feel like your health has declined or worsened in the last 2 years? Has your body weight changed either up or down by 10% in the last 5 without dieting?
Oh
Do you
wow.
have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep? Do you take any prescription medications? Do you take any over the counter non prescription medications for either pain, inflammation, upset stomach, or even sleep aids? Has your doctor told you that your blood pressure, your blood glucose level, or your cholesterol levels might be an issue? And do you catch the flu or colds really easily? So if you
Those
say
are very
yes
good
to any
questions.
of those, this book's for you, because it's going to help you focus on where to start your health journey. Like, where is my weakest link in my health? And then,
Right.
because that weakest link will constantly be chipping away at your immune system. And, bigger problems that to be more of a burden to yourself and more of a burden to your family.
Mm.
And then a lot of times people don't, they keep on saying that they have these symptoms, but they keep saying to themselves, like, they'll go away. And
Yeah.
that if it's left undone, it usually only gets worse. And then you have a crisis, and then you've got a big problem, and you got to have something to work with. So this will always give you something to work with. It will give you a cognitive place of where to take a good solid look. And you can always go back to it again and again and again. All these
Right.
questions are all about you and about, looking at where you are, so that if you are in a hole, you know how to get out of it.
Very well said. And especially after taking that questionnaire that you just mentioned, what advice would you give to readers who are just about to start your book? Because if I was to maybe play devil's advocate here, maybe if somebody was to look at the title of the book, they might think, oh, that's a little bit much for me. That's a little bit too much self-reflection right now. Because, it's health, it's something we wear with ourselves. And I think even if we're in denial about certain things, I think I think the title alone might just upset somebody's feelings a little bit. But at the same time, too, I think your title would also inspire a lot of people at the same time, too. Because, I feel like that's the dichotomy people might run into. So I guess for people who are, let's say, emotionally trying to kind of get over that hurdle, to ask themselves, what is my health really like right now? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, first, look what's stopping you. Is being
Yeah.
fat stopping you?
Yeah.
It's just because it isn't tired, and it also isn't, when you're looking at that formula, sick, fat, and tired, right?
Yeah.
It's like it isn't, it isn't it's always the fat part. People don't know if they're sick. So
Right.
you're playing with 52 cards. You're supposed to be playing 50, and someone told you you have cards, and you don't. So
Right.
when you have the sick part, I was like, what's stopping you from taking care of yourself? Like, what is your biggest excuse? And can you make that biggest excuse your smallest excuse? Because people always have an
Yeah.
excuse about why they don't take care of themselves. And then they
Right.
have a heart attack. 75% of men don't know that they have heart disease until they die of a heart attack.
Wow.
And that's not my statistic. That's the American Heart Association statistic.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, it's just like, we've got to stop, get some thick skin,
Right.
and
Yeah,
and and
absolutely.
and really take a look at, like, what's really going on. Do you want me to say, like, oh, you could lose a couple pounds, and, like, maybe you should, like, consider your stress levels and go out and
Yeah.
hug a tree at lunch, you know?
Right.
Because it's like telling a kid who's about to put their hand on a high burner that's hot. You don't say to them, like, hey, I think you might want to think that out.
Right.
you
Right.
know and, like, you might want to not touch it because it's going to be hot and you're going to burn your whole hand and you're going to end up in the burn unit
Right.
for a month. So
Yeah,
it's
you
just
may
like,
want to second guess that. Don't do that.
it's just like,
Yeah,
I don't play games with people's health. I don't
that's
guess.
good.
I test.
Yeah.
And this book is the first way to get your first test, so then you can see where to pay attention to, where to spend your money, and where to spend your time. So if
Yeah.
someone's like, they're worried about, no one's calling themselves fat. I mean, no one's calling you fat. It's just like, because those are the only people I've ever had, like, write me a note about that, and I
Yeah.
said, well, here's an opportunity to have a breakthrough that you've always wanted and can't figure out how to get past.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like,
Right.
I behoove you to say, like, tell me what your biggest excuse.
Right.
I and do that, then you can lead by example. If parents and fathers are leaders and influencers on their children, then you better step up to bat and you better get on the start line. Because if you're not, if you want to be sick and tired later on, when your kids are, like, running out in front of a car and you can't catch them because
Right.
you're so sick and fat, and tired, you're going to have to go, like, maybe I should have done something sooner.
Right.
And it's just like, and it's like, not that I don't wish that upon anybody, but I think
Right.
we have to be realistic with, like, look in the mirror,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's just like, what do you really see? And if you don't, if you see you're a size 20 and you think in your head you're a 12, then take a picture, and
Uh,
then take a picture of
right.
somebody who's a size 12 and see if you can, and go into a store and try to put your body into a size 12. If
See,
you're a
and by
woman.
the way, I really like your candor and straight talk here,
Mhm.
because if I go to, whether it's, I guess, Barnes and Nobles, and I know there aren't too many that are left, but sometimes if I go to a bookstores, and if you look at certain, like, self-help books when it comes to health, sometimes I think the delivery is a little too soft, or maybe in some cases enabling. Like, and by the way, this isn't directed towards any specific author or an individual or a group of individuals, but, like, sometimes I'll see, like a book, and this isn't specific, but it's like the healthier version of you, and it's kind of just filled with these very, like, surface level platitudes. You're the best. You should love yourself. You're fine the way you are. But I'm like, no, if you're not fine the way you are, like, that's why I'm buying this book. That's like, but, like, I see that kind of style out there a lot, where
There's
I
a
think
lot of
it
that.
try
There's a lot of that style, and people. What happens is that people end up diluting the mud that they're already standing in.
right, exactly,
And they're going, like, well, but I thought I was going to be, after I read that book, I thought I was going to have this breakthrough. And you know
right,
what? It just reshifted everything that I thought. It didn't get me any farther. In fact, I sidestepped, and now I'm second guessing myself. And it's just like, nobody wants to second guess themselves. So you want something that's concrete, and at least
right,
gets you on the right path, moving in the right direction, as opposed to, like, going, like, well, maybe I don't do maybes, and it's just like,
right,
it's like that. In people's health, you can't do that, and so when you're looking at health, mental wellness, when you're looking at your well-being, when you're looking at, being vibrant, being stronger, you've got to take definitive action. It takes a decision and it takes a commitment to your health today, starting this moment, moving forward, and going on for the rest of your life. So do
yeah.
you kind of screw up every once in a while? Like everybody does. I mean, I was at a show earlier where somebody said to me, asked me if I ever sin. So I always say, if you're going to sin, sin well. They said, Dr. Pat, what's your favorite sin? And I said, chocolate croissants, but with no sugar on them. Chocolate
Oh,
croissants. When
I
do I
can't
have,
blame you there. That's good.
and when do I, like one or two of them even. And I have this, like, nice big kind of like robust coffee, like, organic. And I have my chocolate croissant, and I set my year based upon my birthday. And so I just sit there and I think, I watch people, and I relish and enjoy the moment. Do I do that
Right.
every day? No. But there's people who go in Starbucks and spend $8 on a coffee, or some level of a coffee or a drink that's loaded with sugar, and sugar
Yeah, it's like a
causes
milkshake
inflammation.
almost. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, I agree.
and like it has so, I always used to think that Starbucks was like, like an alternative health place when it first opened up,
Oh,
but it's
yeah,
but it's
it's
not
not.
anymore. I mean, if you
No.
look at like 6 pumps of like vanilla, are you kidding me? Who
Yeah.
puts that in there? And if you're having that much sugar, you're setting yourself up to say yes to that first question, because your health in 2 years is going to drastically change. Look at the guy who ate just McDonald's for a month. Remember? He had
Oh, I
like
remember
high
that movie.
cholesterol.
Yeah. Was
You
it
know,
Super Size Me? Was that the name of the movie?
well, it wasn't the movie. It was like some guy who did this experiment, and it was like
Oh, okay.
he documented it on YouTube. And he ate at
Oof,
McDonald's every day. His cholesterol shot way up. He ended up
I
gaining
bet.
18 pounds or something like that. Just for eating a McDonald's hamburger.
Wow.
If you people do something about their health, but they lack the motivation and the commitment in order to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have to say, in my experience, and this is just anecdotal, but the best professors and best teachers I had were always the hard asses, so to say, and they were always the ones who kind of delivered the class with tough love. But the funny thing is, with teachers I had who were like that, they were very tough, without a doubt, and they had reputations of being the toughest, but they always cared the most about the students. So that's kind of the dichotomy in my experience that I've always experienced. One of the toughest professors, let's say in my law school, she was a very harsh grader, and she would put you on the spot, so you always had to read, and you didn't know who was up. But if you needed to speak with her during office hours, if you needed some additional assistance prepping for the exam, always there.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's just like
yeah,
when I mentor and coach, I don't coach. I mentor and coach because I need to lead by example. I need to say, when I tell you
yeah,
something, it's because I've done it, and
yeah,
I have experience with it. And so, and my coaching skills come in with that. You rarely ever see someone who mentors and coaches together. And so that makes me unique in my delivery of how I talk to people about what's your next, whether it's in at home, whether it's in a relationship. I mean, I've had people who started wanting to work with me because they wanted to lose 20 pounds. And then the next thing you know is like we're talking about, like, how to save their marriage. And so, and it's just like, but where did that
right,
stuff come from? Because we bury our emotions somewhere in our body. And
yeah,
so, so the three reasons why people get sick is from trauma, toxins, or thoughts. So the trauma is like starts with the birthing process. 9 out of 10 children who are born has some type of cervical damage from the birthing process. And so that sets up the first inflammation in the body. So you got to get it correct. And that's why you go see a chiropractor, a pediatric chiropractor, for, making sure that alignment's there and is set. And then you have the toxins, from the air, the water, the food that you drink, the whole spiel, and, from your environment, and, the gardening stuff, the cleaning things you have in your house.
oh yeah,
Read the labels. There are at least, there's a product that, I sell to my clients on a private basis called Clear Drops. And Clear Drops detoxifies the body. It gets rid of 28 known chemicals. So let's say if you could get rid of 28 of those 212 chemicals out of your body that everybody has in their blood brain, because when they go deep, it goes deeper from just being in the blood. It also goes to the brain. It also goes to the bone, and it gets stored.
yeah,
And it's a little mini. So you've got that stuff has got to be addressed appropriately. But thoughts can undo everything.
oh
You
yeah,
don't get enough sleep. You don't have that solid sleep. You don't get into REM. You don't get into the deep sleep, which is where the melatonin is produced and released.
right,
So that's why people are so melatonin deficient. That's why melatonin helps some people get to
yeah,
sleep, but it doesn't help everybody. But you really got
wow,
to go back and go like, where are those out of those pillars? Which one am I totally screwed up on? or which
Yeah.
one, how would I stack them? Which is my most important one to pay attention to now? But I
Wow.
always, when I'm mentoring and coaching, always, no matter what session I'm in with somebody, we always talk about mindset. We talk about positive mental attitude. And then we step into like, well, where should we go today? Should we go back to your
Yeah.
childhood? In
Wow.
that imprint that you have that you're not supposed to be successful, because when you have that thought process and that thought process kicks in, you no longer digest your foods, and then you're feeling
Wow.
like then you have pain, you have gluten, and you develop gluten sensitivities over a period of time. And you've also got to look at the quality of food that you're feeding yourself. You wouldn't feed a Ferrari regular gasoline,
Right. Yeah.
and,
Exactly.
you would feed it forward from day to day, and not have an issue with like how those pieces are puzzling together. So if you get that down, then it opens up a whole different world to you that you don't even have to think about it. It's just like when you look at food, you
Right.
think like, okay, I know if I eat that, I'm not going to feel good. So why would you eat that anyway? I mean,
Right.
it's just like I was at a Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner around 8 years back with my brother. I love him, and like he's such a good guy. Somebody said to him, "Do you want cheesecake?" And he said, "Sure." It was a holiday. He decided to splurge
Yeah.
sin, right? His one sin. Well, the
Right.
woman gave him a quarter of the cake, a quarter of the pie.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And said to him, Michael, I go, don't eat that. The next day, his blood sugar levels were all over. He made irritable look like a great thing to happen, because he was
Wow.
beyond it. He had he was having major meltdowns because he's type 2 diabetes. And it's just like, and that sent him off. It took him 5 days to start to get back on track. I
Yeah.
don't know that I'll take one bite, literally, put it in the spoon right here, and then I would go eat a protein because you want to not have the sugar win. But you got
Wow.
to have like, if you don't have the strong will and the strong character, I help people develop that, because that's the mindset that you need to tackle your work. Like I want to be more successful, and I'm just so exhausted and depleted. Dr. Pat, by
Yeah.
12 noon, I want to go take a nap. And
Yeah.
it's just like, how do you get that person to the finish line at the end of the day, and then have
Yeah.
something left over, not only for themselves but for their family?
Right.
It's just like,
Very good points.
and it all starts with what you put in your mouth. You are either feeding the disease or you are like feeding your health. So it's a
Right.
choice of what you do. I mean,
Right.
seriously.
Very wow. Very very well put. And I wanted to talk about inflammation. So touching upon trauma, toxins, and thoughts. So starting at trauma. How does trauma, I guess you could say, exacerbate and aggravate and further encourage inflammation throughout the human body?
Well, when you injure yourself, you have all your inflammatory markers go. If you're causing you an issue, for instance, it's just like those foods are inflammatory to your digestive system. You only
Right.
have one lining, one cell lining in the intestinal tract. So if you damage it, then foods pass through that, and your body goes into starts going over years, going into an autoimmune response to that.
Oh.
So when you have a trauma, and you twist your knee or your ankle, it swells up, right? That's inflammation.
Yeah.
So the idea is to realign it so that the body can get rid of those extra fluids, and it puts the fluids there on purpose so that you don't move the thing. And it gives you
Wow.
the pain so you don't move the thing. That's the idea of it.
Right.
Gentle, like adjusting those joints when that happens. So when you injure, like, when you have arthritis, it's the inflammatory process of the joint.
Yeah.
Anything that has itis in it is an inflammation.
Good
So
to know.
it's, but when you're pulling on, there's 20, at least a minimum of 20 pounds per square inch at that number, of when you're pulling a kid out of the birth canal, in twisting. Do you ever see those pictures? They're like twisting
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
and pulling them up. And that, it's just like, you'd be screaming your butt off if it was you as an adult, it being in
Right.
those positions, So, but
Wow.
they're so flexible. Is not, and it keeps on growing.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like and go. So it's just like there's a reason why the body's like that. But the little poor spine of the neck, you know, all the nerves that come from the neck go down to your arm. And so
Yeah.
you hear much more kids being, you hear kids being more saying like, I have neck pain. I never heard so many kids say that. I went
Mm.
around my girlfriend's kids and go like, Mom, my neck hurts. Can you rub over here, please? It's like I don't ever remember asking my parents to like rub my neck, as a kid.
Yeah.
But people do that, and kids have like a lot of bumps and falls. So like every time you can like when you end up with a bruise is an inflammatory response. You broke blood vessels, and the blood vessels are going to try to heal, so it gets dark purple. Then as it heals, it gets yellow, and it goes away because your body is taking care of that process.
And
When
speaking
you
of
get a cold,
inflammation, yes, yes,
like when you get a cold, and you have
yeah,
like your mucus goes from being clear to being yellow, green, gray. When it's clear, it's still outside your body, it's in your head. When it goes in your body and there's more heat is when it starts to change color and becomes phlegm. And so
wow,
when you have that, it's just like if it's not handled correctly, and if it sits there, it can create inflammation, either bacterial or viral. So you have things that happen in your body that we don't called the itch in the back of my, or I sound more nasal or whatever.
sure,
And you just kind of like write it off and you keep on going. Like might be sometimes, it's just when people tell me that they ended up getting sick recently. I said, well, I go, how about like not putting yourself back in the same environment of the people who were sick to begin with? I don't
wow,
understand
yeah,
that. It's just like, there's a reason, and it's so hard for mothers. I mean, their kids are sick. They're so connected. So they keep on
yeah,
getting infected themselves sometimes.
right. And this topic kind of leads me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Where do peanut allergies come from? Because and this is why I'm asking. So this is, from what
Genetic.
I understand, relatively new. Now, I was born in 1985. I'm turning 37 in about a week and a half. I did not hear about peanut allergies until after 2000. So when I was growing up, everybody ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches growing up. People brought those Ritz crackers with the peanut butter inside all the time. And I also have a 4-year-old son. So now, as I bring him to school, nobody's eating peanut butter. And there's very specific warnings and instructions. Do not, bring in foods that were made, I guess you could say, in factories or processing centers that use like nuts and peanuts and other related things. And this just seems very, very new, much like the neck injuries that you were mentioning with,
Well,
certain small children now.
like people are more expressive of their emotions, let's say. But as far as the peanut allergy, usually before when I was growing up, it was so rare. But people don't have healthy, and the Chinese always say, the gut, they always look at, when they ever needle somebody in acupuncture, they usually always try to include in a tonification point so that the gut and the stomach can be healthy.
Yep.
But a lot of people are eating such horrible foods and thinking that they're healthy foods, and like eating, we didn't also have, when I was growing up, we didn't have GMO foods. So
Right.
we have GMO
Yeah.
foods now. It's just like I always tell the story of like the broccoli, being in some store, a grocery store, and looking at them. And this woman said, "Why are you so pensive?" And I said, "Well, because I'm looking at these two broccoli. One of them is organic broccoli, the other one's inorganic broccoli." It's like, and like, she goes, "Inorganic?" I said, "Yeah, GMO, broccoli." So it's
Right.
like dating. Someone who like,
Right.
loves their kids and loves their wife, and, and when they were dating and courting her, like made sure she was water walked and fed, had great food, had a nice pillow to sleep on, was always warm and cozy, and you always had their back. The other GMO broccoli looks like it looks like a nice
Right.
o'clock in the morning, and then you study, go to school, or you got to go work, and you are totally burnt out. But that buzz from having fun is so much fun. It keeps on, it's your weak link that keeps on drawing you back,
Sure.
and so the weak link is money. So people look at sometimes, buying organic and not organic is going to cost me $1 more for this. It's just like pay now
Right.
or pay later, and
Yeah.
And so, but the story with the woman, though, she just said, "So, which one's the organic broccoli?" And it was in my right hand. I said, "This one." She reached over and grabbed it. She goes, "Get your own," and winked at me and walked away. But it's just like, it just goes to show you, like, food is medicine. So
Yeah.
when people are started having allergies, you got to take a look at what's going on in the gut. You know, Fix the gut, change your life. What's going on? Like, can I ever reverse, like, sensitivity to gluten? Why? And
Right.
there's so many people have gluten problems now.
That was
Who
another thing too.
knows?
That's relatively new in my memory. I never heard of people with gluten problems when I was a kid. Almost unknown.
They had whole wheat products. They didn't have wheat that was partially hydrogenated and or whatever they do
Okay.
to use the. So they're using and they're GMO wheat. So
Oh.
your body does not recognize fake things. GMO's fake. It looks like it, but it's fake. It
Wow.
recognizes real things. So if you're going to have like yogurt, eat real yogurt.
Yeah.
If you're going to without fruit in it. Eat real yogurt. Like if you're going to have, like, because as soon as they take something out of it, they have to put chemicals in it in order to create that better balance that I think that you're looking for.
I love
So
eating straight like Greek yogurt, with no sugar. I know it's sour, it's kind of bitter, but I love it.
the sour and bitter part's good for you. It helps your digestion.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
definitely feel that too. So, speaking of inflammation, the stomach and stomach lining, what I guess what foods are the most destructive to stomach lining? And I know we talked about GMOs, but I was wondering if you could probably expand on that. And would that include things like alcohol being destructive on stomach lining, or maybe even
It,
tobacco?
well,
Maybe some of the secondary effects and things like that.
it a compliment because one, it came from grapes.
Right.
But you also have to, like, when you put a glass of wine in your mouth, sometimes it will taste really sharp,
Sure.
but people still drink it. I don't know why people do that. It's just like it doesn't fit with your chemistry at the moment. That's a good way to
Right.
tell, you know. And so, it's just like you have foods that destroy sugar, corn syrup, anything
Oh
that is
yeah.
GMO based, like soy, corn, tomatoes. Things some people have because their gut is so sensitive now that they're sensitive to lectins, and lectins come from the seeds like tomatoes and peppers, and things like
Grapes
that.
too, right? Do
You know, well,
lectins
anything
also
that
found
has
in grapes
seeds,
too? Okay,
anything that
yes.
has
So,
seeds,
yeah, right.
and so like basically, and so some people have that sensitivity more than others. Um,
Wow.
and so, you got to take a look at, when you eat, if you keep a food diary, you also want to know how you feel while you're doing that diary. And like, and
Yeah.
because sometimes food sensitivities can show up 4 or 5 days later and you're trying and you don't know where they
Oh
came
yeah.
from. So it's,
Wow.
so that's why deal with self and figuring that out is not the smartest move to do because you really need somebody who's like, well, tell me what's going on. Let's do this first. Let's see what we have going on, and then we can move into the texture for that. Let's go in, and then we can say, this is our next step of what we have to do. That's why my book's so important, is because it organizes those organ systems and asks questions that your doctors never asked you before. I've been told that thousands of countless times that my doctors never asked me these questions.
Yeah, and I was gonna
And,
say too, I've
and he
never met a
should,
physician that addresses these things either. So
you
this is
know.
great for me.
Well, and they should, because then they
Yeah.
would give them a clue about maybe what's going on below the surface, so that you don't have to go out and get the flu to find out,
Right.
and then have a big struggle, or and have more inflammation, and or have a repeat of something that you're like, God, I haven't had that since I was like 8 years old. Well, it's been in your
Yeah.
body since you're 8. I mean, it doesn't go. I mean, our cells keep on renewing each other, but people say to me like, well, it's in my family. You're not your DNA. Your epigenetics is bigger than that. Your epigenetics will tell you that when you put yourself in a certain environment, if you keep on doing the same thing that your parents did, of course you're probably going to get the same thing. And
I
it's
like
this.
the way you put that, by the way. You are not your DNA, because I feel like, and this is, in my experience, when you talk to people and they want to get into, let's say, better health and better shape, but they don't follow through, that is often what I do here. Well, my parents have it, it's genetic, so I guess it's kind of like a very fatalist type of attitude that seems to be common. It's like, well, it's inevitable, I'm going to get this anyway. But it
Well,
seems
who? I mean,
it seems like yes,
well, I just think who thinks like that? When someone tells me that, I just want to shake them and
yeah,
just like snap out of it. Man up, woman
yeah,
up, and take responsibility and accountability for
right,
your health and wellness. You
right,
know, and so even so, there's still something that you can do. Let's say that still gets to play out. You know, well then if that does, there's things that you can do to minimize that expression of that.
yeah,
It's just like, so it's like everyone's going to go jump off the precipice of a mountain. I'm not doing it. I'll take the pictures, but I'm not.
yeah, exactly,
I'm not doing that. And
right.
I don't understand people's thought processes like that because they're fatalist. They're going like, well, there's nothing I can do. Well, you get up in the morning and you breathe and you brush your teeth. Well, you do that because you think there's something you can do, and you don't want to get tooth decay, and you don't want to have heart disease, and you want to
Right.
have other chronic illness or diseases that come from your teeth because you don't take care of them.
Wow.
In moving forward, you have to have, people have just got to be more accountable. They got to be bigger than their excuses. Stop giving me excuses that you like that you're a child.
I
It's
like
not
that. You have
pretty.
to be
It's
bigger than
not
your
pretty.
excuses.
You got to be bigger than your
Right.
excuses. It's not pretty. It's not sexy, and your partner doesn't think you're sexy either. So
Right.
they keep on going. Because I ask women all the time and men, when they're going through that relationship stuff, I'm always
Yeah.
going. So when they get upset, how old do they act? And they
Right.
go, and it's like, it is not even like, oh, let me think about it. It's like, bang, I got a number, and I said, so, because we all
Right.
do that when we hit a brick
Sure.
wall. We all have a tendency to go into a past behavior that benefited us, but you have to like, how do I get past those behaviors? Because now they don't benefit me anymore. It
Yeah.
doesn't get me, it doesn't propel me forward. It doesn't save my life. And matter of fact, it helps the brain, the lizard brain win every time. And when you look at the lizard brain, when all the lizard brain's in is interested in survival. Oh, you can't do that. You're not good enough for that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't do that
Very
diet.
true.
And then the mammalian brain, which is automatic, has a tendency like, they like, my stomach was really bothering. And I try to do it all at once. So all detoxes are bad. It's just like, and that's not
Oh.
true. You got to change how the mammalian brain perceives that emotion. It is the holy grail in business. It's the holy grail in relationships. It's the holy grail in health. So if you can change that image and that picture, it's easier to be more accountable to a positive thing. And how you do that is with your conscious brain. The conscious brain says, I am healthy, I am vital, I am active, I am a successful human being. God gives me the food that I breathe, the food that I eat, the air that I breathe, and the water I drink to repair, revitalize me for the future. Radiant energy flows through me every day, in every way. I have the right to be healthy. I have the right to have love. I have the right to serve, and I have a right to embrace life. And I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
This is like,
Wow. That's
and that's your conscious brain talking. So if you say that in the beginning and the end, and stop starting your day off with TV, and start ending your day
yeah.
with TV, which is so negative, how do you expect to have a better experience if you keep on feeding negativity before you go to sleep? And when you first get up in the morning, how are you supposed to have a better day? It's more of a struggle. You can do it, but it's by far much more of a struggle.
Wow. Well, wonderfully put. And I have to say, especially when it comes to the thinking, that applies in just about everything you do. Like, let's say, martial arts, and I know that example comes up, but I remember when I was younger, I did things like breaking boards and on a few occasions breaking like cement, so to say. And it really does start with your thoughts and your breathing. And a lot of times, for individuals who got hurt, there was some sort of hesitation or second guessing, because I think if you're doing that and you're second guessing, or if you're feeling nervous or anxious, your form is off, your breathing is off. And instead of, I guess, let's say, instead of hitting it in a straight line, right, where I think all of your power is going in a very linear, organized, smooth fashion, it's crooked. And then that's how you like break fingers and maybe mess up your wrist or
Well,
something like that.
that's how you enter yourself. I mean, like, and
Yeah.
sometimes when you're in those positions, your blood sugar levels are starting to fluctuate. So it's always
Oh, okay,
like,
yeah,
so,
that makes sense
so
too.
because if you want to think better, feel better, move better, you got to eat well. So you give the food that your body needs as nutrition. And so it can assimilate it and it can go to the places that it needs to go to in order to
Yeah,
function at a higher, at a higher, elevate that level of success that you want to have. And in the function, it's easier to do that with those processes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and speaking of thoughts, it can't be understated. I can't stress enough how powerful thoughts are, and they can really flip the script on both a good or bad day. And in fact, very good thoughts, or very positive thoughts, are very empowering. And in fact, I think even having positive thoughts in bad situations are especially empowering as well. And I think it almost becomes like a muscle memory, except for the brain. When you're kind of in those situations, maybe a greater resilience against danger and stress and stuff like that. Like, I kind of always think, like, if there's a bad situation, what if you actually just thought the opposite? Whether it's an injury or anything. And then, I feel like in my personal experience, like, wow, I feel like I kind of leveled up right now. I feel some sort of positive development going on, and you feel kind of bolder and more focused and calmer. So, that's just from my thoughts
Well,
on the matter.
so even
No
if
pun
you,
intended.
you know, well, even if you have something that goes on, the question to ask is, okay, what happened? What did I learn from this? And how can I
Yeah,
not do this again? It's
yeah.
just like last Monday, I was gone all day long and I didn't eat dinner because I knew I was going out to dinner and my blood glucose level was down and I wanted to park in this one parking place. And I saw in a split second, I saw a parking place that I could have just scooted right through and grabbed it. And I said, no, I'm going to park here. I'm just going to get over with it. And I turned the wheel a little bit too much and I scraped from the driver's side and about a good piece, like chunk of it. It didn't
Oh,
dent
yeah.
it. It just took I just hit the
Like the paint.
paint. And so I just got, I wanted to see what it looked like. So I'm going to inspect it. And then I just, locked my car up and went in and I had dinner and somebody said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great, except for the pillar I just hit, and I
Ugh.
said, so, and they go, did you do a lot of damage? I said, I don't know. I didn't really look. And I said, coming in here was more important because, I was there for a particular reason because I had to give a talk, and so when I did that, and someone said like I was like, oh my God, I never would have been able to do that. And I said, well, I just asked myself, is there anything I can do about what happened to my car then? And the answer was no. And so you move on. I can deal with it on
Yeah,
Saturday when I go tomorrow morning when I go get an estimate for it,
yeah,
and because it wasn't, because it's, I'm like hoping it's not $1,000.
yeah, yeah. Of course. Oh, for a screen, it shouldn't be. And in fact, if you probably just need some. On a side note, you may just need some little buffing and touch of paint, which doesn't even
No, it
come
needs to
close
be
to that.
it needs to be sanded and buffed. But it's just
Yeah,
like
okay, but still, it
then
shouldn't be a
and then
thousand dollars.
oh yeah, I know, but I was just saying like I was like there's nothing I can do about that until I can address
Right,
that point. So why would I want to make my lizard brain would go
right.
like, oh, like don't go to sleep, go back outside and take a look at your car again. And my
Yeah,
mammalian's brain going like, you know what? Cars can be fixed. I'm
yeah,
okay. My cars can be fixed. And then
absolutely.
it might cost me some money, but my car can be fixed. It's replaceable. My
Yeah,
life isn't replaceable, and it's not up
right.
on the table. At the chopping block to do it, go to do a sneaky way around, or in your diet, in your exercise, in your mindset. You've got to go. What's on the table? What's on the plate? For your life, and looking at that piece so that you just like can like, do I want to go cheap? It's not the time to go cheap when you're talking about your health and wellness and your mental wellness.
Right,
you know
right.
and so you're talking about chopping the block, or the 21st started doing at 8. Your mindset, it's the mindset that pulls you through. And so you
Yeah,
either choose to have a good experience or a bad experience. If you want a good experience, keep on focusing on good experiences.
very
And
true.
the lizard brain will go like, but, and you'll go, see you later. shut
Wow,
up,
lizard brain is
get off,
such a downer.
get off. You know, it's just like we all around those people. I mean, those toxic people, we could go on for a whole hour on
Oh yeah,
toxic
and that was going to
people.
be my
You
follow up.
know,
Toxins.
oh,
Let's talk
you
about
know,
that.
you have people who are like that. You know, they call now Debbie Downers or Karens.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's just like so. You know, and I hate to say this, but every Debbie or Karen that I know, except for my sister Karen, um, you know, fits into that prototype. They kind of like where I said like, are you like living up to your like you know your name?
Yeah.
Um, you know, but there's people who are so focused on, you know, you say like, you know, like let's go here. Oh, I don't like that place because the last time I was in there, the fans were on. Well, maybe they won't have the fans on, or the music was loud.
Right.
Maybe that you can ask them to turn the food. You can turn it down, you know, and they
Right.
go. And then if they have to go, then they sit there and they like with a bad face, you know. And like you know, and what you got to do is just like, what do you do with a kid who acts like that? You ignore them.
Right.
It's funny how people toxic people. It's just like, you know, but
Yeah.
they're my family. Well, you can choose how much time you spend with your family. You
Right.
know, it's
You can
just like
regulate that.
you know, it's just like if you're going to go over for dinner, don't go for the day. Go for dinner. You know, and buffer it in with a half hour before and maybe an hour behind. The dinner part, you know, is just like you've got to take care of your mental wellness, and a
Right.
lot of people are not doing that. Like corporate America is like really failing. Um,
Oh yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and calling people out on that. I went to a Catholic school. You would never, you know, when I had a fever, my mother would come up and she wouldn't put her lips. She would slap the back of her hand on my head and she'd go, get dressed and go to school. If you're still sick at noontime, I'll come get you. I mean, and so I always showed up. I just figured you work through it. You jump into the middle of
Right.
the fire and you work through it.
Yeah.
And that's the gift that she gave me, you know, to move forward. It was instrumental in me growing when I was growing up. And my father was always the one that you could do anything you put your mind to, you know. But she was the one that was the one gift that my mother gave me was just like you
Oh, that's
just jump into
wonderful.
the fire and you figure out how to get out of it, you know. And it's
Yeah.
just like you know, and if you really are like that, then I would you know call up and they would call up and have her come get me. But it was so rare. I think I only missed like 2 weeks of school in 8 years.
Wow.
And, you know, and it's just because I didn't have the mindset of being sick,
Yeah.
you know, and so you know, but that's one way of like you know like how your mindset ends up you know working for you. And if you have to do something like if you're walking up a hill, I had a girlfriend who was way walked and she lived in this really and had this incredible decline going down to the ocean, you know, from where she lived and to walk in town to go to the ocean. And that on the way coming back, she was out of breath, like 1/4 of the way up. She goes, how do you do it? And I said, how I do it is I pick up the next telephone post and I make that my immediate
Yeah.
goal. And then the
Yeah.
next telephone post. And then I go, and I set a pace. I'm not trying to walk fast. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
walk with you. I'm not trying to walk with the guy that's in front of me. I have my own pace and I just keep steady. I look forward and I look where I want to go at where my goal point is to get to. And then I change my next point. And then you're easy to do that. The other day I was in downtown Atlanta at that conference on Monday and the escalator broke
Oh.
on this one exit and the elevator wasn't working. So anybody that had a disability needed to go to
Oh
the
yeah.
station and turn around and come back the other way. But when I was going up, it's the steepest slope, you know.
Yeah.
And there's in DuPont Circle in Washington D.C. is a really super steep slope. So you know, I was like, I had parties like on the way walking up. I walked up halfway and I decided that I needed to stop. You know, and this like then I would take steps like every 10 or 12 or 15 of them, then I would stop until I got
That's
to the
good.
top. But I had people walking by me, stopping, going like, "Hey, how you doing?" It's like this is like they like, "Oh, it's good for your heart." I said, just think if you did this every day, you
Oh
know, and
yeah.
took the steps up, you'd be so far ahead of yourself, you know. And I said, dude, like your endurance would be really great. I said, so this just
Good
tells
point. Yeah.
you endurance. I need to have something to be able to move like forward, and I need to have more strength. So how do I get stronger? Body wise, one way it's just like let's do that. And like
Yeah.
and all girls like to have nice tushies, you know. So it's just like you have. So when you're putting, you know, and you're walking up the steps, Steps are great. Steps are great for like, like lower back, and also, for like working your glutes, and your hamstrings, because you're pushing, you're working your extensors. So I just
Yeah.
looked at it as like, I'm not going to the next station, and I can do this. And my
Yeah.
mindset is I can do this. I just might have to chunk it out. Now, if it was like 10 years ago when I was walking 10 miles every day, and because I'd go in the morning for 3 miles, 3 miles at lunch, and 3 miles after dinner, and I was with my dog. My dog only took me up hills that had a huge
Yeah.
incline. So, but I taught him going like, Jack, we don't stop going up the hill. We just keep on moving and we keep it steady, and but that wouldn't have been like a non-issue. But it really was an eye opener for me, going
Yeah.
like, I need to pay more attention and do, more. I wanted, I need to get back on my routine of doing steps and going a little bit farther and really pushing myself. But
That's
I was
awesome.
really glad that I've been doing my 150 setups since the beginning of the year, every day religiously, and planking
Wow.
and planking for 30 to 45 seconds. That's really hard to do if you don't plank. 10
Oh,
seconds is like,
planking is very hard. That is not easy at all, to say the least.
right now up to, it's like 40, like 40, 45 seconds every
That's
day,
awesome.
and
It's
so it's
pretty
just
good.
like I've been doing it.
And that definitely
It-
feels like a long time too when you're planking.
Oh, it's like I'm watching my timer on my telephone. I'm going like, it can't be 30 seconds. It's got to be. It's wrong.
Right.
And then you just kind of like, just hold it again, and you just like, tighten your tush up, and just like focus,
Yeah.
because that's when the lizard's brain's going like, you don't have to do this today, and
Yeah.
my mammalian brain's going, but when you do it, you feel so good now. Lizard brain
Yeah.
go away. So you gotta be in control of your thoughts, because when you're not, the detriment of that is inflammation, and it undoes things that you do for, like your, and how your functions in your body, like digesting your food and that type of thing, and it sets you up for on a path that is, really it's a bigger struggle. So
Right.
you gotta crack that whip and get inside your body and your
Wow.
mind and
And,
move forward.
and speaking of which, thoughts. And I know we've kind of touched on this in various degrees already, but tell me about thoughts and inflammation.
Well, when people, a real simple explanation I give for that is that, what you think you become. And
Yeah.
so if people have, if they're constantly worrying, a lot of people worry. People tell you that all the time they worry. Mothers have a tendency, especially after giving birth, they have this, the hormones are all over the place. And so when people are worrying too much, or they're overthinking something, whether or not they're worried about it or not, but just like going like, and ruminating, like ruminating,
Yeah.
it interferes, especially when you're going to go to sleep. You have more inflammation throughout your whole body. So those thought processes, and how that ties into the inflammation is that it just starts changing how certain habits and how certain rituals happen. And so, like for instance, like it'll like keep you off track, and suddenly you're in an accident. And
Hmm.
you're thinking like, how did that happen? So
Yeah.
having, being concentric with your thoughts and commanding your thoughts, and having that decision and the commitment to keep your thoughts under wrap is really important in moving forward, and like in all your choices, because people who are
Yeah.
indecisive, they always, in Chinese medicine, they relate that back to gallbladder function. Like when people are
Interesting.
indecisive, and the gallbladder, I always think the gallbladder is about resentment.
Ah,
And like who do you,
interesting.
like when I'm working with people on the emotional level, and and asking questions, and I'm looking at their history, I'm going like, tell me about this, but to try to piece that in here to like an exact, baseball, and put it
Yeah.
into a box, it's a little bit difficult to do that. A lot of times
Yeah.
people think they're stuck, and
Yeah.
it's just like I teach this thing called the 9 dots. And the 9 dots of it is to be able to draw 4 lines that are continuous, and it touches all the 9 dots. Well, the only way that you can solve that puzzle is if you go out of your 9 dots. And so people equate those 9 dots with like, what's in my box? What do I know? And the
Yeah.
truth of the matter is, when you hit the realization and you hit the ceiling one too many times, the wall one too many times, you have to take a look at your box, because there's no walls.
Ah, there you go.
are all there, be outside the 9 dots, but they're all there, and there's only the only person who's keeping you constricted in that stuck in that position is yourself.
Yeah.
So no box had like those boxes for your mind, and for your solutions in life. And I also call it solutions, spelled SOULUTIONS.
Yeah.
It's that it's just like, and looking for those and creating, balance, and creating, moving forward, and like making better decisions. All those pieces of that pillars of health have got to be there,
Yeah.
in order for that to happen. But the first thing always is to, like, where's my mindset? Am I saying good things or am I saying bad things? Am I
Yeah.
eating well or am I not eating well? And if I don't know if I'm eating well or not, then people need to call me, and I will tell them, because there's a certain process of looking at, like, where's that glitch at, and how
Yeah.
does that relate to your other organ systems? Because if you look at, we
Interesting.
all, like I said this before, we all know what a Swiss watch is, and we know the pieces have got to work. It's just like, if you fold your fingers like this is my natural way to do it. If I fold them
Yeah.
like this, it doesn't feel normal.
Right.
I would if I
Sure.
did it for 30 days every day, but
Yeah.
my normal every day of the week thing, if I went to go put gloves on, it's like, you're going, oh, these gloves don't fit, and you got to take them off, and find the pair that fits you perfectly. And it's
Yeah.
of your health and wellness and your well-being to fit together. That is why we have Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, is so we know where to start that journey.
Wow, that's wonderfully put. And a little bit of an aside, with everything that's going on with COVID-19, I would imagine people have kind of split into camps. I'm sure some people are probably even more health conscious now, thinking about, like, oh, I want to live as long as I possibly can now. So I would imagine this has probably inspired a certain amount of population to maybe rethink and revise a few things. And then I think for others, some people are like, well, mortality, my mortality is very much in question right now. I'm going to eat and drink whatever. And I think that may be reflected in some of the numbers that have come out as far as, like, rising rates of, alcoholism or obesity, and, even mental health, disorders as well. And I kind of wanted to know, in this day and age, um, and maybe not necessarily as medical advice, but maybe philosophical advice. What can people do to, A, maybe mitigate whatever it can come out of this, but also B, how can they maybe change their mindset? And I mean that as far as the second category, where I think maybe some people may just kind of use this as a pretext, like, well, there's COVID and there's all this other, complexities and craziness going on. I'm just going to eat and drink whatever, because it's all the same shit in the end.
Well, if you want me to comment on it, and I think we need to call the virus COVID-19 what it is. COVID-19 came from 2020, and it stays in 2020. People will test positive for COVID if they have a cold, or they have a sore throat, because that's what COVID is. Coronavirus is that. So the test that they have doesn't necessarily always accurately tell you what you have. And so they tidied in, marketing wise, using the word variant. So they say COVID-19. So when a virus morphs, it becomes weaker. So this is the reason
Right.
for saying that COVID's 2020. And so COVID, and so it turned into the variant, which has a kind of this. Doesn't variant make you feel like it's really dangerous? It's a
Yeah,
variant.
it sounds
It's a
like
variant
something,
of that
yeah, from a
evil
movie. Yeah.
COVID-19,
Yeah.
right? And COVID-19 was a very strong virus. I'm not disputing that, but all the years before this, they always called every variation of the flu, and COVID-19 is the flu. It is the virus, and it's not the disease. They called it, a variant. So how come they stopped calling it a strain, like the Delta
Oh,
strain? Or why didn't they call it the strain of, like, the Omicron, which is
this is a very good point.
which is
Could you define strain and variant, just for the
they're the
audience?
same
This is a
thing.
very good point you're getting. Okay.
Same thing. So
Okay.
that's what they decided to call it. So Before
Okay,
that,
yeah.
they called it a strain, and it got so that strains are like, oh, it's just another version of the
It
flu,
sounds
you
less. It
know,
sounds
right?
far less severe. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so then virus morphs. Doesn't matter. It gets weaker and weaker. So Omicron comes around, so that's like 3 years later. So Delta was like, we had 2020, we had 2021 Delta, we had
Right.
2022, we have Omicron because they had to call it something. Here's the problem. You cannot tell what variant or what strain of the flu it is unless you do genetic sequencing. So they just
Which.
made that name
Oh.
up
Wow.
because genetic
Okay.
sequencing is incredibly expensive
I was gonna say
to
that's quite
do.
expensive.
And
So.
and and they can't do it on each person. So all they can tell you from the PCR test, which the guy who invented it never intended it to be used as a diagnostic tool.
Yeah.
And so, all it tells you is that you have, because the red line it says COVID on it because they put it on there because they want to scare you. And so, and it might be true, and it might be like, there's still like a couple people that I know that they actually had COVID and not a strain, but it's very rare in this day and time for that to really
Right.
happen. So so in the COVID-19 part of it, in naming it, they gave a name to something that was already on a strip. It's almost like going to get a pregnancy test. They have the two lines. And
Right. Yeah.
but
I saw the test.
and
Yeah.
also it's just like when they test you, they only testing the back of your throat and your nasal passage if they do both, right? And so when
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
do that, it's never entered your body. If your mucus is clear, it has not entered your body. So there's tons of things that cold, or the flu to ward it off while it's still in that position. So just because it tests positive doesn't mean that you have it. It could be a false positive. It could be a false negative also. I mean, it can go both ways,
Yeah.
because no testing is perfect, and so when you're looking at that, it's just like, okay, so like now we have that. So you have the people who say, I'm going to pay better attention to my health. People are creatures of habit. You do
Yeah.
not, the leopard does not change its spots. So you have the media who's feeding information that they want you to hear, not necessarily that you need to know, but they want you to
Yeah.
hear about, X, Y, and Z, and perpetually, it's constantly bombarding you. It is manipulating how your thoughts actually function. It's talking to your primitive brain.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say, is the news kind of organized to set off your amygdala or your like reptilian brain all the time? Because it just seems
yeah,
like it's all breaking news. It's an
that's
emergency
that's
right
that's
now. It's
that
it's
is
urgent.
that is
You know.
that is the lizard brain, and it also triggers the mammalian brain for all the bad things. Like, look at how many people died.
Oh yeah.
So the assumption is that if you get it, you're going to die. Well, if you cut, because going back to the story of being sick and people not knowing it, over the years, people have been taking meds and masking their problems and keep on pushing down what the real problem
Oh
and the root of the problem is that's going on in their bodies. So meds, and people think I take my meds, I'm healthy. I take
yeah.
blood pressure meds and my blood pressure is normal now, so I'm healthy. That's not health. If you got to
Yeah.
take a med in order to create a normal, it's just like
Yeah.
that's not healthy. It's just like there's lifestyle changes that you can do. In Chinese medicine, there's 6 diagnoses that go with high blood pressure. In the United States, you either have it or you don't. And so, but in Chinese medicine, it takes a look at like what else is going on in the environment that might have caused
Yeah.
that. And then you address the problem of what's causing the problem in the first place,
Yeah.
why you're treating the symptoms. So that's my MO. So it's just, so when someone talks about like, now they're healthier, like I went out and I lost 30 pounds, then just because you lost 30 pounds doesn't mean that you're healthy.
Right.
You've got to take a look at, because you don't know if your organs are functioning 100% of the time. And just because you have an absence of diseases or infirmities doesn't mean you're healthy.
Yeah.
What it means is that you have an absence of disease or infirmities, and you don't know if your organs are functioning 100% of the time. You usually don't know unless
Right.
you have a close to 70% or more failure of an organ to function. When they
Wow.
test orthopedic tests, and when I did orthopedic tests on people, it only tested a small group of function. By the time that somebody had pain, they had a big issue. But a
Yeah.
lot of people, you can do orthopedic tests. You can do press your head down for cervical compression, pick it up. Does that bother you? For most people, it's not going to bother them unless
Yeah.
you've got to be like, all the stuff that people are saying, like, well, I lost weight, or I did this or whatever. So people could be doing that. And indeed, they probably are healthier because they lost weight, but doesn't mean that what the other components of what they're doing, like what they're eating for food to nurture themselves, what they're thinking for thoughts and their mindset and their positive mental attitude, it doesn't mean structurally that they're in balance. Because when you have one strand of hair across a nerve, that comes out of the spinal nerves that's been tested, it interferes with how that nerve functions and tells what the rest of the body what to do.
Yeah.
So, you have that component of it. So it's just like, it's a symptom, not any disease or infirmity is a symptom. It's not health. And that's the big mind shift. But the media and the NIH person, there, who's the head of the NIH, wants you to think that because you test positive or something, or you don't test positive, or because it's like, if you don't have signs and symptoms, you're suddenly asymptomatic. But they made people believe that everybody who was asymptomatic was contagious, and that's not true. It's just
Wow.
like, how dare you manipulate people's brains and minds to think that I am sick? Everybody around them is sick, that you're contagious, you're evil because you didn't get a vaccine. People who have vaccines, I know a particular person, too close person from me, that they, after their a couple months after that, they came down and they were diagnosed with cancer. Cancer
Wow.
rates for people who have taken vaccines are up. What I read in the literature is up close to 350 to 500%, depending upon the area that you live.
Wow.
So, it's just like, and they're not talking about those things because they want you to get the vaccine because they're in bed with big pharma. And so, but like, how about working on your immune system? Like, how about finding out, like, what is it that makes my immune system be better than ever?
Yeah.
So that if I come around somebody has a cold, my body goes into health and fights it off. I sneeze, I get congested, because my body is trying to get rid of an organism, a strain that's not supposed to be there. It's
Yeah.
not fighting it, but are you expressing health then? Absolutely. If
Yeah.
you didn't express health, you would be dead. I mean, it's
Right.
just like, and it's a bold statement, but you have to go like, if my body can't handle it, then I'm going to, it's just like, my immune system can't handle it. I'm going to go into a cytokine storm and I'm probably going to die because I
Wow.
haven't taken care of my health. And people don't take that responsibility or that accountability about their health because they always let somebody else do it for them. They let their
Wow.
doctor do it. They let them, and other health professionals do that. They let the CDC what it is or what it isn't. The things that they do are stellar, but this is how they've handled this a situation with this quote unquote pandemic. It's just like, it's a coin toss. I mean, it's just like, and like the transparency or non-transparency of it, and how certain people who are billionaires that I'm not going to mention, who they factor in
Yeah.
to, like, and I'll just say it, like, why did Bill Gates give Dr. Fauci $1 million about a month or so ago?
Right.
He's very intimately in bed with him, you know,
Yeah.
and so, in running his foundation. So it's just like, it's just like, I don't know what the answer to that is,
Yeah.
but when I hear that, because I think Bill Gates has his agenda, he said we're going to have 700 accidents from the vaccine. How did he know that? Because
Yeah.
we're right
That's
about
oddly
there.
oddly specific too.
And how did he know that? And we're very close in those numbers. If I remember the last numbers I read, we're very close. And then now he's talking about the pandemic being over. How did he know that?
Mm.
People have got to remember
Yeah.
what people say, and what they said. Dr. Fauci has been accused of lying, and they have caught him in blatant lies, you
Yeah.
know, and about the wet market, the stuff that's gone on in Wuhan.
Yeah, and actually, much of the circumstances around that too. He's really damaged his own credibility. It seems,
He should
especially
be
if you look at
removed.
yeah, especially if you look at I think the way media was kind of parading him around in 2020, and if you look at it now, it's almost night and day.
Well, and also, if he had any decency and ethics and morals, he would step down. And but he like there's an agenda, and if you go back to his misgivings with the AIDS virus and things like that,
Yeah,
it's like his history goes back. And Robert Kennedy wrote a book called the True Anthony Fauci or something like that, and I haven't read it, but I read excerpts from it. I'm going, it's like, even if 20% of these are true, Anthony Fauci should be, for me, in my personal opinion, I
yeah.
don't give anything he says, credence, at all. And so, and I think that he's been called out so many times and caught so many times that if he was a decent human being, he would step down.
Yeah, and by the way, even from other physicians I've spoken about, it seems like they were kind of the most surprised about his deification, so to say, back in 2020, and relating some of his backstory to the AIDS virus and how that was handled back in the day. Now knowing that, not knowing that previously, I'm even surprised how high he was elevated, all things considered.
Well, his wife works at the NIH also. And so
Oh,
I read
well, that kind of
that.
writes itself.
So, and she works in an arena, to my understanding, this could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, is that her division of the NIH is the division that has the efficacy for if something moves forward,
Oh, okay.
like from the trials and things like that. And so it's like when that department puts a stamp on something, it gets the NIH approval.
I
So
see. Very
there's,
interesting.
and so I'm thinking, like, God, I was so surprised to even find out that he was married. Now, you said
Well,
something about, people who just don't care, and they go like, there's nothing I can do anyway, so I might as well just, eat
yeah, I
drink and be
do
merry,
sense
right?
there's a certain level of apathy out there. I think because it seems like the world's kind of ending, and I think because I think the faith in many of our institutions have been so damaged, especially
Uh-huh.
over the past, especially with the pandemic. But this was even going on, long before that too. But I do sense a sense of apathy out there. Um, s- you know,
Well,
listen, if it's all the same in the end, I'm just gonna drink more and just eat shittier even
there's
more.
there's always those people, and that's the GMO broccoli people.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't can't. If you give them attention, you only feed their mission. So I have a very little bandwidth for people who will not take care of themselves, and
That's
as
yeah.
it's very energy draining, when you're talking to people about their health and they're giving you that rhetoric and you're going, it's like, okay, fine. I mean, I go, like, if you ever get around to changing your mind, give me a call. And if I have space and room for you, I say in
Right.
my agenda and on my calendar, I'm more than happy to chat with you. Good luck, you know, and don't do anything I wouldn't do, which people always laugh when I say that for some reason. Um,
Yeah.
so at any rate, so you have to, people have excuses for all sorts of things, right? For but, like, start being bigger than your excuses and make the excuse to
Absolutely.
move forward so that you can have all the best tools at your disposal. So what are tools that you can use? Why are you sick, fat, and tired? And it's just like, because there's things that we don't even relate to as being a problem or being a root of a problem of what's causing that sick part. We can know what's causing the fat part, and there's a solution to that also. And there's a solution to being tired, but you have to, being accountable and being able to move forward with assurance and certainty that you know where to start your health journey. And 20 minutes, 15 minutes is hour, and giving some directives that will be beneficial so that you can live healthier, happier, stronger, more vibrant, and be on fire every day. Who doesn't want that? I mean, it doesn't,
Exactly.
it's like, I don't, I mean, that is a really important piece of this book in the puzzle, because I've never seen an author do that before either, by the way.
Wow.
Offer that
And
one time to connect with me.
yeah, and I have to say too, I think for most people, I think regardless of where you fall on the COVID issue, and listen, and it is controversial, and perhaps rightfully so. I think at the very least, and this is just me speaking as a layperson, but and as an outsider, but at the very least, it looks like there's some kind of negligence or malfeasance going on in a lot of these, I guess you could say, traditional structures that people tended to have more faith in many, many years ago. So I would say this: a book like this, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? I think it's a great roadmap to troubleshoot your health. And I think, especially if there's any time to take accountability for your health and how you just function as a human machine, so to say. I like to think of the body as a machine or like an engine.
You are a machine.
This is definitely,
right?
yeah, this is the time, this is certainly the time to do it. And I would ask you, this, Dr. Boulogne, where can people find your book? Let's say after watching this, they're pumped. They really want to.
Well, they're going to be able to find it on Amazon,
All
and
right.
they'll be able to find it in Barnes and Noble. But so while you're waiting for your book to come, because I know you're going to order it, is that I made a special link today so that you can get a bird's eye view, because we talked about being toxic, right? And the toxins in the environment. So today, and the show notes, there will be a link that you can go into, and you will take what I call an MBQ. It's a metabolic detoxification questionnaire. And that
Which everyone, it's posted in the comments on my on today's post regarding this live stream. So check it out. Yeah.
So at any rate, so what will happen is it's like you will get a number from that. It will tell you how well you're handling all the toxins in your environment. It will tell you whether or not you're a candidate for that process. And then the second questionnaire is the questionnaire that gives you a snapshot about your gut. Because you've got to have some place that when you have toxins that your body's processing, they got to leave your body. The only way for them to get out of your body is to sweat it out, puke it out, or in the toilet. And so the toilet gives you a choice of urine, or it gives you your bowel movement, right? Poop.
Right.
And so but your gut health has got to be up to par, because you don't want to ever do a detoxification if it's going to keep on recycling in the blood, brain, bone, and fat. And you don't want that to happen. You want this to leave your body. So that number that you get on the second questionnaire will give me what's going on throughout your whole gut. It sections it off for me when I look at the results of that. And the first one tells me the number, which tells me if you're a candidate or not. And it also tells me, that number tells me how well you're handling toxins in your environment. It's a sneak preview for your health. So that's going to be with these notes as the part of the post, in order to be able to grab that. So that will be a very cool thing for you to do, while you're waiting for your book. And you can also grab time with me on there, because there's a link to my calendar that I can speak specifically into these two questionnaires. And you know what? They don't take more than 7 minutes, the whole process, And so, and then you can decide what's my next best thing to do, And I will tell you your next best thing to do. But the first thing to do is to get on that link and download that link and open it up and take the questionnaire, so that we can have a conversation, so that you can move forward in 2022. 2022 is going to be a kick-ass, wonderful year. It is. Sorry about the swear word. And
no worries.
Because year of the tiger, and had a fire sign. It's the year of the fire tiger. We haven't had that much wonderful positive energy in a while. So let's use that so that we can and get better health, and think better, feel better, move. And that whole thing, I say that 1,000 times a day, but it's true. It's just because if you want to be able to get your first quarter, numbers in, you want to get your second quarter numbers in, your third, and you want to have the energy and the drive to be able to do that, and the mindset that pushes you through that. And you got to have your health. You need it for everything. So it starts with these two questionnaires. And
awesome. And one more thing too. Now, I know you also sell certain, I guess you say, herbal supplements. Talk a little bit about that.
All right. Well, I help support people when I'm dealing with them for a 10-day detox, and or just their general health. I make recommendations about what targeted supplementation to take. I also work with a company that is really, it's very cool. I was watching a video from them last night, and they say, what's interesting is that they showed a map because the basin of the Mississippi, and so there was some chemical, and I don't remember the name of it right now, that was, agriculturally in, all over the place in the heartland of America,
Yeah.
and that washed off and came down, and there is a high incidence of that in people, and it's very carcinogenic. So if you look at this particular map that they were showing, is that it shows you like it's almost like death row in America. This is where this happens
Wow.
at, and it's that New Orleans, Mississippi, and if you look at all this, the subsidiary like rivers that dump, like they all dump into the Mississippi, it
Yeah.
all comes down into that basin there.
Wow.
So, in order to get rid of toxins in our system, we need something to pull those heavy metals and those other
Right.
chemicals out of our body. So that particular product, if anybody wants to talk to me about it, I'm more than happy to talk to them about that. I can send them my personal link for that product that has all the research. It is patented 3 times. It is patented in over 34 countries.
Awesome.
Wow. And it is the only zeolite product that passes the cell membrane barrier and passes the gut. They are chewable. They're not water soluble, and this is the only product that exists at this point in time that's water soluble, and is patented in 3 patents. That show the process of that. But it's a very cool product, and there's no side effects. It's a supplement that you would take in addition to what you already take every day. So it helps you get those other things out of your system that shouldn't be there, that are causing you to have, ultimately a chronic illness or disease or a malfunction of some organ system, ultimately because of the accumulation of the toxins in your weakest link, wherever that is.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, and if you have a link, I'd be more than happy to post it in the comments section, for this episode. So I think that's great. And listen, it's always better to prepare and plan than to react. And I think the problem today is people are reacting because they're not prepared. So I think the first thing we got to start with is our own health. That is really kind of your first means of defense or offense, however you want to think of it. Navigating this crazy complex world. So I would suggest read Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired by Dr. Pat Boulogne, and you will really get to learn how to troubleshoot and comprehensively understand your own health from somebody who has the benefit of being a practiced physician and practiced acupuncturist. So you have the benefit in this book of someone with the perspective of both Western and Eastern medicine. And, and with Eastern medicine, despite, the few skeptics out there, Eastern medicine has also proven itself greatly for close to 100 years with the numerous benefits of, acupuncture and cupping and, many similar things to that. So having kind of these two perspectives, you do know how to plan, prevent, react, and act if necessary.
Sure. You have to be good Girl Scout or Boy Scout.
That's right.
Come prepared. I mean, and if you don't know what the preparation should be, there's always somebody who's out there. So if you're in a different area than I am, and it doesn't, it's like, and if we're not a fit, then, I can help you find somebody who's in your area that you can physically go see. Because a lot of times people feel more comfortable with that.
That's wonderful. And Dr. Boulogne, when is the official release date of your book?
Well, Hearsay has it. Excuse me. That starts on March 2nd.
March 2nd. All right, everybody. If you're looking for the official release, and I take it this is the official release of the hardcover version of this book, correct?
Yeah. Hardcover and digital is going to be the same day.
And digital. March 2nd. So mark that down on your calendar. And listen, Dr. Pat Boulogne, and I would say this to anybody, you are a tremendous asset and you are a tremendous ally with a vast wealth of knowledge in health, providing kind of an Eastern and Western approach to things. So, and I know you have a decent, LinkedIn presence as well. So I would suggest to anybody, if you're interested, if you want to start somewhere, shoot a quick DM to Dr. Boulogne, and she will point you in the right way. Because even just from the first few conversations I had with you were just extremely enlightening. And now this being the second live stream appearance as well, I always walk away with a tremendous amount of knowledge that I think about and ruminate over, and then I do my best to incorporate it into what I'm already doing.
Yeah, one thing is that I practice what I preach, and
Yeah.
so I always think that's a good question to ask any doctor. Like, if you go to a chiropractor, do you get adjusted? Go to an acupuncturist, do you get acupuncture? You go to a medical doctor, do you take your own advice? You're giving,
Right.
you want to give, because there was one story, one time when somebody who was getting their doctor saying your kids need to be vaccinated, and then they said, well, do you vaccinate your doctor? Do you vaccinate your kids, doctor? And he said, well, and then they have some vaccinations. Well, what vaccinations don't they have? Like, because I don't want my kids to get the same. Then I would want the same for my kids. I mean, clearly they're acting in the best interest of their children, right? So, but I know, like, I remember a patient of mine when I was living on Cape Cod, and I was on Cape Cod at the time, was telling me that story. She said, I was furious. I got up and walked out of there with my kids, pulling them out, screaming,
Yeah.
And she said, I'm just not going to do it. I said, well, I want somebody who's going to help me, who's going to lead me, who's going to mentor me and coach me. I want them to lead by example,
Yeah.
and I want them to, like, so would you do that? It's just like, if, you want me to, like, I have a benign lump in my breast, for instance, and that's, can be turned into something dangerous. So I'd ask the doctor, so would you cut yours off?
Oh, I see.
It's just
Yeah.
like, it's just so
That's a
easy. It's
very
just
good
like,
point. No, that's a very good
it's
point.
just like,
Yeah.
because you can monitor it in a different way. You can do, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But I mean, but there's things that people do. So what the whole point of me sharing this with you is that, I have a high level of common sense, and I don't do things unless I would, tell people to do them,
Right.
unless I do them myself. And, and there's always a solution. Like, somebody, like, it's like, oh, here's a solution. Here's another solution. There's more than one way to like, to get to Rome,
Yeah.
and so, and it's also exploring those possibilities with you, because when you do that, then you can ascend to higher success.
Well put. I honestly, I
Right?
think that this is a perfect note to end on. I can't add anything to that. That was beautifully put. Dr. Boulogne, thank you so much for coming back onto the show again. I am
Thank you. It's
very
a
much looking
pleasure.
forward to the official release of your book. I will be getting it. Everybody,
Yep.
please check out Dr. Boulogne on LinkedIn and on Amazon. Check out the book. 2022 is going to be a great year, but you also have to start with your mind, and you got to start with your body too.
That's right. They all got to work together, And
They
if you
do.
give me something to work with, man, we can go. We can make miracles. So thank you
Awesome.
very much, Adam. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you
And
so much.
Happy New Year, 2022.
Right. Yes. And Happy New Year as well. Take care.